Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Hull and Back podcast. Tonight we're joined by the very special Steve Jordan. The guy does not need any introduction. You either know him or you don't. But before we jump into any sort of questions with Steve, what I'd like to do is just say thank you to those that support ourselves. So I want to start off firstly with the Hull Badge Man, and I mention this every single week. He stands outside the grounds in his own time and he tries to sell the badges to us on our way in. These could be a badge from the day, which is Hull City against whichever team, or it could just be the Hull City badge, old badge, new emblem, new crest, or whatever you want, whatever's on there. They are available. The second one is Hull City Retro. For those that don't know who they are, they recreate old shirts without going into too much detail from around the time when Steve was around. So if you want a shirt from around when Steve was there, then sorry, Steve. But instead of paying the prices for an authentic one, which may be hard to get your hands on now, you can get them for £50 a pop, plus £3.99 delivery. And lastly, we have Charlie Spalding, filmmaker, local lad, going about it freelance at the moment, and he's worked with some brands as big as Adidas and with the people like Jackie Abbott. So there's another local business, show your support, and if you need anything from them, just reach out to them. They're all available to get for our Twitter page. What I'd like to do now is just go into a couple of questions, and hopefully we get to learn a little bit more about you, Steve, the background and how you fell into this. So that's probably a perfect example. How did you fall into the career of a stadium announcer?
It's not something that I ever intended to do, gentlemen. So my career is as a radio broadcaster. Down the years, I have worked many parts of the country, many radio stations, luckily I do find myself as the current stadium announcer at the MKM. And how did I get there? Well, firstly, I know that some people say, he's not even a Hull lad. He's not got a Hull voice. No, I've got a radio voice, which because of it's just something that's kind of just crept up on me over the years, and I don't even hear it, essentially. But I am from Hull. I went to Anlaby School. I went to Wolferton School. My first game was in 1979. My dad, I badgered my dad to take me. My dad wasn't really a football fan, but I managed to take him. The first game I went to was on a Tuesday night against Brentford. We won 1-0. Keith Edwards scored. And then my next game was on my birthday. At the end of the season, we beat Exeter 3-1. Then I was hooked. And then I managed to start getting tickets from Anlaby School because I used to play football for them. And we had many a good time with my friends on the South Stand. But I was one of those that would get there when the gates opened at 1:30 and just stand there and just watch Boothbury Park fill up from 1:30 and just stand in the same place, just so I could get my place against the crush barrier. Incredible. Anyway, left school, then eventually got to do the job because being a radio presenter was all I wanted to do, really, even though the careers advisor at Wolferton said it would never happen. Down the years, I've been on many different radio stations. I currently work for BBC Radio Derby, but I still live in this area, so I commute. But at one point in 1999, I was doing a breakfast show on a radio station in Nottingham. Nottingham Forest were looking for a new stadium announcer. They got in touch with the station because they'd heard me on the radio, and they asked if I'd like to do it. And I said, God, what, work for Nottingham Forest? Of course I would. So, so I was combining doing the radio show 5 days a week with working at the City Ground on match days. Did that for 5 years. It was a chance meeting with somebody from Hull City because I'd moved back to Viking at this point, or the Viking building. I was doing a breakfast show on Magic 1161 as it was then. And it was a chance meeting somebody from Hull City who, and I said, nice to see you. I haven't seen him for such a long time. But if ever the job comes up, I'm working at Forest now, but I'm now back in the area. I only go to Nottingham for home matches. Give me a shout. The job came up. They gave me a call, and 17 years on, here I am. So that's in a nutshell how I'm here.
Well, to be fair, you've got probably one of the most iconic voices for anyone across Hull City. Anyone who supports Hull City, they got that's if they don't know your name, they'll be like, that's the stadium announcer guy. Like, I know that voice.
Genuinely, this is true. and I hate to say it, but I just think it might be a story to cheer you up. I went to a very well-known drive-through a few weeks ago, placed my order, and when I got round to paying, there's a lad behind going, "I knew it was you." I was really happy with that.
Imagine the little moments.
I couldn't believe it. I was thinking, why wasn't there anybody else in the car with me so I could prove it? So if you are that lad and you are watching this, thank you very much, because you made me very happy that day. I wish I hadn't ordered so much food, because I thought, I bet you're going to tell everybody how much I've ordered from McDonald's.
You got free burgers. Did you tip him?
Oh, don't. No, I didn't.
No way.
I meant to tip them. Oh, no.
The guy gave you the one thing you've been looking for.
No. It's COVID. It's contactless. He can't. It's
good save that. Yeah,
good
save. Tip anybody. I've got that one, haven't I?
Like Matt Ingram on the saves there. Quality. Top driver. So, I know you obviously do the MKM Stadium, but do you also get other gigs from the side of that? Because I'm sure I remember you doing. Do you remember 10th Legion at the Bonus Arena? Did you ever do that? Like the
MMA?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Again, I thought so.
I did.
You share the voice, remember, don't you? I'm not even sure that's a guy from.
Well, I was approached by somebody who was Hull City fan. Said, "I'd love you to be in the ring with your suit and the mic and introducing the fights." But what they didn't tell me, and I found it I think I did it 3 or 4 times, really enjoyed it. But what they didn't tell me is that in between the fights, the MMA fights, they don't come and clean the canvas.
So that the blood.
So towards the end of the last bouts, I'm literally in a lovely suit and nice shoes, standing on teeth and blood.
Oh.
And it's none of this has been cleared up. Oh. Wow, this is incredible.
It's a COVID nightmare, isn't it? That's what.
Yeah, it would be now. Blimey. Yeah, I'm sure it must have all changed by now. But no, I mean, I really enjoyed that. That was something that came out of the blue. Yeah.
It only came to mind because I was at the there was one at the MKM on at this weekend, Friday just gone. I thought, I wonder if he's going to be there. I might try and get a selfie with him before and about. Do you remember me on Friday?
But I've done that for a good 10, 12 years, I think.
Yeah. I thought I was trying to think back as to how long ago it was. But like I said, this sort of context now, the way we're going to go about this is it's going to be questions all over the place, and they're probably not going to make any sense. We're going to be from one place to another. So strap yourself in.
Okay.
So, one of the questions that we want to ask as a podcast is, what's your thoughts on goal music?
Oh, now obviously we don't play it at the MKM. We did used to play it at Nottingham Forest, and nobody ever batted an eyelid because I don't know if they'd still do it now at Nottingham Forest. I haven't been there since I left. But I did it, but only because the guy who'd done it before me had done it, and the CDs were just in the suite that I would broadcast from. So I wasn't as dressed as well maybe as I am for a Hull City match back at Forest, because I wasn't really seen as much. I was behind glass, and I would play a lot of the stuff in myself. So yeah, it's just one of those things that we never thought about. It's obviously an American thing. I think there's a lot of American sports suit goal music. Personally, I think that obviously fans are making all the noise that needs to be made when a goal's scored, and I think the natural ambience of that is what makes it special. And it can be I think it's one of those things where people think it's just a bit too American, a bit too glitzy, and a bit too, so from my point of view, not for me.
So I've been to a few stadiums. I think the place where I remember it the most at was Middlesbrough, but we lost 4-1 that game, so we had it a lot. But I'm not a fan of it either. So along them lines.
Mm-hmm.
But going on from this, that's great. In terms of the players, then, so this is match day experience. Are you just as in awe as we are with the players, or do you look at them like they're just colleagues?
I think back before COVID. I think colleagues, but special colleagues, if you see what I mean. It's like, because I still get a buzz with footballers now, etc. Incredibly so, and I thought I would have maybe grown out of it by now, but I haven't. But no, I do get a little tingly. But obviously, the last year and a half, not been in the stadium for a long time, and I don't really have much of a relationship with any of the players. Really, they probably have no idea who I am, and why would they? It's really
Humble.
So I think Tom coming back, I've yet to speak to Tom again, but obviously back in the day we did a lot of things together because he won man of the match a lot, and I was presenting him with awards left, right, and centre. So I think Tom would probably have more of a relationship with at the moment, until things get a bit normal again, hopefully.
So talking pre-COVID years, then we've obviously in the Premier League, and there was some phenomenal names coming through. Like, who did you want to speak to, and who kind of didn't? Did you get the time of day off anyone from the opposition players, or did you not really want to be seen doing that in front of your colleagues?
Oh no! I mean, I'm very respectful. Even when there's Premier League years, you've got massive names on the pitch, and when they're particularly before a match, when they're all training and you're stood around the tunnel getting advice on what to do next and stuff like that, and somebody talking in your ear, genuinely, I would always try and avoid eye contact.
Head down.
Even to that extent, I wouldn't. But you would obviously get an idea in your sort of the corner of your eye as to who it was that was walking past you. But if I'd have stood there with an autograph book or my camera out, it wouldn't come down very well. So no, it's not something that I ever wanted to do. But boy, I used to get very, very excited.
I can just imagine the scenes like when Rashford scored the last minute winner against us, and you've gone, I'd love to have a chat with him as well. Not now, but in them sort of moments, you'd go, I'd love that. Or Rooney just walked off the pitch, or something. I'd love to have a chat with him, or just learn a little bit about him. But you just can't do it, can you?
I know whenever Jose has been as an opposition manager, and of course my seat is essentially next to the away dugout. I remember the first time he came, I literally couldn't take my eyes off him because you just find him this spellbinding character.
He was still known as a special one then, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, why? Yeah. This is quite early on. So yeah, why is he like this? Why, and he just waiting to hear him shout or say something, or but yeah, you're thinking, no, I should be watching. Steve, watch the match. You're meant to be watching the match. Stop looking at Jose.
Have you got any commitments in the? I'm going to refer to it as a job role. Do you have any commitments in the job role, which means you miss some of the game? So is there anything where you've got to be seen, you've got to go at the back and get ready before they go off the pitch, or can you literally watch the full game?
No, I get to watch the full game, so I sit next to the away dugout, like I mentioned. I do other things at the club. So for those that are entertained in the Circle restaurant, I'm in there before the game, chatting with ex-players about the game. And after the game, we've got quizzes and games to win prizes from Tiger Leisure, that kind of thing. And back in the day, we'd interview the man of the match after the game. We're not doing that at the moment because of protocols and stuff like that. And also before the game, we'd also used to speak to a couple of squad members that weren't involved with the game that day. That they were good of them to come up and have a chat, but that's kind of understandable, I think, and hopefully it's one that the fans realise and get at the moment is they're not taking any chances, and quite rightly.
Yeah, I think that when you mentioned about the players, did they used to come on the pitch and have that conversation on the microphone? I'm sure I remember something along those lines. Or I might just be making that up.
No, I think that the halftime pint you've been having is stronger than you think.
No, okay. I thought it was pre-game as well, to be fair. I don't know. Maybe that's something you could bring in when the restrictions drop down.
No, I have done things like that at the end of the last match of the season before, and grabbed few people. I remember doing the same with Andy Dawson at the end of his last game. But no, it's nothing like that on a regular basis. They're off the pitch and they're gone. They're getting ready.
No, fair enough. So, what's your favourite Hull City moment since you've been stadium announcer? What you was there live, you saw it, and you thought, "Wow, what's been your favourite moment?"
I think one long string of good moments, I think, have been particularly the early Premier League years when you were saying all these players and managers were just coming out of that tunnel. And as somebody who has been a fan in attendances of, at one point, I'm sure, just under 3,000 at Boothbury Park, to find, and realise that you've got huge television cameras pointing at every angle, and sometimes not just the UK is watching on Sky or BT, but the whole of the world is watching. It's only when I've been on holiday to America and I've been in bars in New York watching Premier League football and thinking, oh, hang on a moment, we've done that. In fact, I have watched Hull City in New York. That's right. Yeah, we were away at Tottenham, and I went. I went to a bar to watch City at Spurs.
Which one was it? Which game?
Can't remember because there would have been a day of alcohol involved.
I think that half-time actually was a little bit too strong.
Yeah.
But I only say that because there was a point where we played him twice away in the space of like 3 days, and I remember going to both, and we had him like on the Sunday. We had him again in the League Cup on the Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, no. Are you talking about the Giovanni goal? When we
won the Giovanni goal, though. That was a 1-0.
Which was who scored that one? I'm getting confused now.
Giovanni, the 1-0 game in the first season. That was the first season in Premier League. That was.
It's not the first season you're talking about.
No, it was. I think it was
2013.
Yeah, second time back. I think it was.
Right. Okay. You see, I'm older. My memory's not great. But I was at White Hart Lane.
Memory.
But because you said Sunday, you see that I remember that the Giovanni goal when we beat Spurs up. I was at White Hart Lane that day.
I still remember that goal. Like you couldn't physically pick the ball up and put it more in the corner.
Oh, couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah. But I'm going to go on to something that I don't think many people know about you, Steve, and I don't think you shout about it often enough because this is an incredible achievement. But you was at Russia 2018 as a stadium announcer. Tell me about how do you get the gig? Where does it start? What about the feelings? We all know about the news beforehand in terms of hooligans. What's going through your head? What do you do? There's so much. Tell me.
I will try and tell you as much as I can in a shorter space of time as possible. So there, I was approached by a lady from a Russian production company in the March of 2018 on LinkedIn, a private message. And I thought, this is a wind-up. And then I replied as me being very interested, but in real life thinking, it's a wind-up, but I'll play along with it. Then there was a long time before they replied to that. And the reason I found out afterwards is because LinkedIn is actually banned in Russia. And they were using different ways of getting online to be able to contact me until we managed to convince them that it might be a good idea to just email me. And it was only a week before the tournament in the July that June, when I flew out and that I actually believed I was going. When they sent me the details of where to get the visa from, so I had to go to Manchester. But luckily I was working in Manchester at the time, so I didn't have to go far to go and get the visa. Plane tickets arrived. It wasn't until I was on the tarmac at Heathrow that I thought I was definitely genuinely going. So they'd sort of done a search for somebody like me. Then they'd watched a match when Hull City were on the television. They heard me, and then that's when they gave me the offer of the job. So essentially, I did 10 matches at World Cup 2018. Wow. 4 matches in the city of Saransk, 6 matches in Nizhny Novgorod, which included the a quarter-final between France and Uruguay. That was my last game before I flew home later that night. I did the England-Panama game, of which I've got my greatest memento yet, which was at the end of my time there. I got very friendly with a guy from FIFA who works for the MLS in America. Knew I was English, and he was working that game as well, England-Panama. And I have in my possession an unkicked reserve match ball from that game, and best match ball, the actual game stamp on one of the panels, on one of the leather panels, which I still can't believe I own to this day. So I ended up, so it was like a 4.5 hour journey in a minibus between the two cities. They put me up in 2 different flats in 2 different cities. I lived with a man called Dimitri for a month, who was my Russian equivalent. So what would happen during the World Cup games, I'm sure you've heard it on international games, we have an English speaking announcement, which is me, and then the host nation tongue, which was Dimitri, so he'd speak in Russian. But he's very well known in Russia as an ice hockey announcer. So, and then he's done the Olympics and all that kind of stuff. He's great voice, but speaks very good English. So luckily we're living together. We got on very, very well. And it was kind of like men behaving badly living in our 2 flats between the cities.
Men behaving badly abroad, is that what it is?
So we had just the most fabulous time. I made a lot of friends. There's a reunion being lined up in Moscow at some point in the near future, which would be great. We get the whole team back together because there's a lot of people involved in putting that all together. We'd be there 6 hours before a match for rehearsals, which would go on forever and forever and forever. Believe it or not, we'd have pages of scripts, a lot of which I've kept and brought home with me as mementos as well. Absolutely thrilled. But as I say, so I did the 6-1 game for England against Panama on the Sunday, and I'm reading Harry Maguire's name out, and I remember reading his name out. I'm thinking, I wonder if he recognises my voice. That's all I could think when I was doing it.
And did he approach her up? No.
No, because Hull City, I'm very near the players. I'm on the pitch side, but in both the stadiums, I'm back way in the goals. I'm inconsequential. So I was shorts and t-shirt while I was there. So there's no there's no suit. I didn't need. Although I did want to make an impression, so I did actually fly from Heathrow to Moscow and then the connecting flight to Saransk in a suit, and then realised that everybody was there was so it never came out again. It was the only time I wore it. Yeah,
it's like the time everybody tells you it's fancy dressing it.
Yeah,
one of those moments.
Yeah.
So what's next then? Is Qatar on the cards?
I doubt it, because there's obviously a lot of English-speaking people in Qatar that can probably do the job at far less expensive, because it was very expensive to get me over there. And other people like me dotted around, because I nearly went to St. Petersburg to do those matches. And then they said, actually, if you'd be prepared to travel between the 2 stadiums, you can be here essentially for twice as long. And I thought, well, yeah. so I sort of I got scrubbed off from doing the games in St. Petersburg, which would have been lovely because the views at St. Petersburg are gorgeous. Yeah. But so I ended up more in the central area of Russia. So, but those nights, I mean, so 2 hours in front, I think. So you'd have kickoffs essentially at 10 o'clock on the night matches in the later bits. So they'd finish at midnight. And then sometimes if we were staying in Nizhny, for instance, then we'd go out and have a right good drink, and we'd probably roll in about 5 o'clock, which is fabulous. But sometimes we had to go at the early stages, had to go back to Saransk for the game the next day. So we'd be in a minibus till 6 o'clock in the morning on really bumpy roads. And that was quite scary. I was very, very scared. So I'd just be sat quietly at the back of the minibus with my headphones in, listening to podcasts from back home to make me feel a little bit. I thought I might get homesick, and I did a little bit. But it was still something I'm so glad I did. So
how were the locals then? Because we all saw in the news in the build up to it in terms of England fans shouldn't travel abroad. The advice was given, don't do it. How was the locals?
Okay, so in the two cities that I was in, Saransk is a very, very old, up-and-coming city. It's not quite there yet. Nizhny, a lot more cosmopolitan, a lot more with it. So the fan parks at both. I decided when I was packing to go that I would not take my England shirt with me. And because I thought if I wear it and I get picked out, you know, I don't want to be in a position where I'm in trouble abroad.
Vulnerable.
Yeah. I went to a fan park on the day that I would have worn an English shirt. So the game against Colombia. So I went to watch it on a big screen in the fan park. And I could not have been more wrong.
Wow.
Every bar I went into before that and after, at any time I was there, because I was English, people wanted to talk to me. At the fan park, you had people there with different shirts from different countries. I remember chatting for ages with some Brazilian people. It was just phenomenal. And I was gutted that I never dared take my England shirt and wear it. And so at the end of the Russian people were utterly wonderful to me anyway. I had such a lovely time, and the people were just really good, really great.
So nothing like some of the press painted out. So
none of that, absolutely none of that. And on the day of the England game against Panama, it's the only England game that I did. The Panama game where we won 6-1. I thought, I could be in trouble here. So the night before, I decided that I wasn't really going to go out drinking. Well, I was going to go in a little area that not a lot of people would have known about. But luckily, I was with a chaperone who sort of knew the area. And I had no need to worry in the end because it was all fine. It all passed off absolutely fine.
Did you think England could win the tournament?
Oh, God. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Home.
Yeah.
What a time that had been. Would you have extended your stay?
No, I got talking with a lot of English fans out there who were literally, they didn't know where they were going to be sleeping the next night because they were just banking on getting tickets for the next game and then getting an interconnecting flights to wherever it was that they were going to be playing. So it was an adventure for them as well. I was actually quite jealous of them. But so if you remember, England's quarter final against Sweden was on the Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
The first quarter final was on the Friday night, and that was France-Uruguay, and that was the game that I did. I then, once that match was done, my Russian team took me to the pub for a few drinks. I then got a flight to Minsk and then connected to Manchester and then got the train back from Manchester back here. And I literally sat down with 7 minutes to go to watch England-Sweden. And to me, it was weird. It's like, I was there yesterday.
Yeah.
And now and obviously my eyes are down here because I'm so tired because I've not slept. I don't sleep on planes. So yeah, even now when I look back at the diary that I put up on my website with all the pictures, I can't believe that was me that did it. Yeah.
What an experience. So I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but we have been asked by a couple of followers on Twitter to ask a couple of questions. And the first one...
I saw.
Yeah, so the first one's going to be from one of our partners, which is Hull City Retro.
Okay.
They've asked, what do you miss about booth rate that you don't get at the MKM Stadium?
Well, I never worked at booth rate. The only time I ever worked at booth rate was working for Viking FM. I used to do a program called Who Ate All the Pies, do a bit of commentary. I'd also go during the week and interview people like Mark Hateley and people like that. That's going back a bit. But I think when I got my dad to take me, and then my granddad subsequently as well, we'd sit in the West Stand because it was posh. And sometimes somebody would clear the ball, it would hit the underside of the West Stand roof or the top of it, and you knew that in delayed reaction, 3 or 4 seconds later, you would be showered with rust. And I would never, ever forget that. You'd literally be sat there doing this, and you wouldn't be just, yeah. So, but no, great. And I always seem to remember as well, from Booth 3 in the West Stand, it always seemed to smell of cigars. I always used to smell of cigars at Booth 3 in the West Stand.
A couple of times I went to Booth 3, I was still new, so I don't remember taking any of the names of the stands in or anything like that. I couldn't tell you what stand I sat in. All I know is I stood with a Barry in front of me. That's all I remember. So I can't relate, like, especially to the West Stand. If it was posh, we wouldn't have been anywhere near
that. So were you at the side or
we're behind the goal?
Oh, you're in the south. You're in the south stand then.
Yeah, I've been behind the goal, and we was there for our first game was Macclesfield, I'm sure it was 3-0. We lost. It wasn't a good game, but I still managed to get the bug even after a loss. So
yeah,
growing trend. And another question from Hull City Retro was, I think this is a bit of a tough one. It's something that I've never had asked before. What do you think would have reached the same level of success if we didn't move to the MKM Stadium, or what was known as the KC back then?
Ooh. I think from Hull City's point of view, the timing of the move to the stadium, which maybe had been unforeseen, was perfect, because I think stadiums now, like ours, are quite common, but maybe not so much at that point. And I think, I think appearance is everything, and obviously there is a lot of love for the old Booth 3 Park, and like I say, I can still remember the smells and the sounds and everything that went with it on a match day. But I think when you look at a stadium like that, regardless, you think, oh, they mean business.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's like you said, I've never heard that question before, never been asked it before, but
no, it's a really good question. I thought
it's all part of the package.
Yeah, it's one of those, in it, where it gave us a platform to kind of build on. I think it was a perfect place to start building from, and without that, you couldn't imagine going to, say, for instance, the Championship with Booth 3 still. So they came hand in hand with each other, didn't they?
Yeah.
So this one's from at Daginger42. He said, "How did it feel to be back at the MKM Stadium this season after like a season with no fans?"
Wow. I'll tell you what, it's been very, very weird. And I still think even now it's maybe a little bit low key. And I think, I just think it's because fans are only just getting familiar as to where they're going to be sat and how many people are around them, and I think even now in real life there's still that little, just walking down the street, there's that little bit of tension. But my word, you watch any match on the TV. I was watching a non-league game on BC at the weekend, and that was hardly full at all, but you could see that the fans in the stadium was having such a great time. And I think that's the same everywhere. People are just thrilled to be able to go back through a turnstile, to be able to see familiar faces, to sit down in their seats and cheer the boys on. I'm absolutely convinced, it's part of the healing process. It really is.
I mean, for some people, it's just routine, get back into that Saturday routine because they've missed it for so long. But you mentioned there about walking down the street, and this isn't all city related, but I've noticed it myself. Like, I live in Driffield, and a lot of the streets are really thin. So if you're walking down the street, you'll often find someone will either walk onto the road into traffic instead of walking next to you. It's just mad how that's like become.
Yeah, guilty as charged. I do that.
Yeah, and I mean, I've adopted it as well, but before I used to probably just shimmy down the side, didn't you? Just make sure you both get down the path, but it's mad one. So this one's a good question.
Okay.
From Jord at Jord Hook. He said, "What has been the hardest name to pronounce, and have you got any wrong?"
Now, if I've got any wrong, I'm not aware of it, but I will tell you a story in a moment.
Giannakopoulos has got to be up there.
Yeah, as has Jan Vennegar of Hesselink.
I knew you'd say that.
Which I think I did once walk around us in a circle in the car park, saying it over and over and over and over again, even though I knew how to say it. The problem was, because I'd heard a few people having a laugh saying Jan Vedegor of Hessel Road, I thought, if I get that in my head, I can say that. And, well, as far as I know, that never happened. But I remember for a while I did Hull FC as well for a couple of seasons. And I don't know what came over me. And I was actually reading it from the script. But if you know your rugby, you'll be aware of
Joe's a big rugby fan.
Paul Cook, who left Hull FC to go to Hull Kingston Rovers. And Paul King scored a conversion. And I said, with a conversion for Hull FC, Paul Cook. And then luckily, the crowd started laughing. And luckily for me as well, the microphone had been left on. And I just went, I'm really sorry. And they were once again. And as far as I'm aware, that's the only time in 22 years of doing this I've ever messed up that I'm aware of. I'm sure it was been pointed out to me if I had, but no, obviously there was one time when I worked for Nottingham Forest, they had a friendly against India once. But luckily, and they said, oh, there'll be some announcements in Indian. And I said, what? So it's Nottingham Forest versus India, the Indian national team. But they were joking with me. So when I got there, luckily, like the World Cup, there was a second announcer.
Oh, okay.
And I gave him such a hug.
Thank you.
I just don't want to offend anybody, because you're going to literally give me a team sheet I've got to learn in 12 minutes flat.
So do you not, like, with some of them, is it not a case of a name pops up and you're like, I'm going to have to get some advice on this one? Or after time, have you just realised how some things are pronounced?
Occasionally, and I can't give you an example because I genuinely can't remember, but no, it has been known I will go to the backroom staff of the opposing team back through the tunnel and say, I'm the announcer, I don't want to get it wrong. How do you pronounce this? And I will write it down phonetically, but that's maybe 2-3 times a season.
Because you often see it, like even with commentary, like a big one at the moment is Bruno Fernandes, but a lot of people call him Bruno Fernandes, and it's got to be difficult for yourself to get it right.
Back in the day, at Derby County had Paolo Wanchop, who for a while became Paolo Wanchope, because that's how John Motson started. So it's like, well, who's right? So sometimes a player can sort of change their name, their pronunciation, because maybe they've told somebody how it's spelled, how it's pronounced, and then commentators, etc., start saying it a different way. So it's like you start to doubt yourself. So those are the occasions where you ask. It's sort of like, no, how do I say it? Because I don't want to get it wrong and make it sound as though I don't know what I'm talking about. Like
another classic is Jose and Jose, Jose Mourinho or Jose Mourinho. Like,
yeah.
We see it often, don't we?
Yeah,
and so the last question. It's been a pleasure having you here, Steve. And for anybody who doesn't know this, it's going to come out on the Twitter anyway. But we've already done this once. I just forgot to click record. So thank you very much for your patience, Steve. I really do.
When we started this podcast, it was light behind me, and you could see my garden, and this whole one's been in the darkness.
And do you know what? To make it worse, the kid who normally does the recording, he said to me before, and make sure you click record in the top right hand corner. And I didn't do it. I was overwhelmed. I'd seen Steve, and that was it. My house in lights. So the last question then, Steve. This one's by Joe Grasham. He said, "What is the best game you've ever announced on?"
Oh,
Hull City, Nottingham. International, what is it?
To be fair, Nottingham spring to mind because the time I was there, it all kind of gone wrong and never really recovered and still hasn't.
I'm going to have to push you for an answer, Steve.
I'm trying to get them in the order. The 6-0 against Fulham. I do have some of Tom's hair. I was one of the first
Oh, really?
so I do have some of Tom's hair in my loft as a memento from that day in a little sealed package. I think the game where we had to wait for 8 minutes added time to know that we'd got promoted. So all the players are in the tunnel, the Cardiff game. And also, of course, when we lost 1-0 to Manchester United on the last day of the season, but Villa did the business against Newcastle and we stayed up. And then Phil Brown came onto the pitch and sang.
Took him off you.
Yeah. So, no, what happened was Phil wanted
the truth's coming out. The truth's coming out again.
He wanted to come. He wanted to bring the team out onto the pitch, but because there were fans on the pitch, he wouldn't. And no matter what the stewards and the police were doing, maybe understandably, couldn't get them off. And I was, didn't matter what I was saying over the microphone. They would go. So in the tunnel, Phil says to me, "Here, give me the mic. I'll go onto the pitch, and I'll tell them to get off and say the players will come back, but you've got to go and sit back down." But in the meantime, what happened in those 2 minutes, the fans had got off the pitch and sat down. So the story is Phil goes out and that's what he was going to say. But he was like, "Oh, I don't need to say it now because everybody's gone." And then he started singing. And I'm like, "Oh." And then I realized that he's live on Sky as well at the same time. And I'm stood next to him. So I'm thinking, I'm going to back off a little bit because I don't really want to be in shot because this is his moment. So I sort of crab-like sideways walked away from him, away from the camera. I was thinking, you're in this by yourself. He finishes, throws me the microphone. I catch it in one. I can't believe it. And then, once all that's done, Alex Ferguson is in an area just off the left of the tunnel, and you'd think as the manager of Manchester United, having just won 1-0 against us, he'd be, all football-y. But no, there was a lady around who was carrying a baby, and he was fawning all over the baby, and like, "What's his name? Oh, that's good." And I'm like he was acting like a granddad. And I'm like, this is mental. I have no idea what is going on. And I even went to bed that night. I'm literally pinned to the bed. I'm like, did that day just happen? That was weird. So I got 1,000,001 stories from that day. So that day as well is, even though we lost, it was one of the best days. And also reading the teams out, because they get you to read the teams out at Wembley. So I've done I've done the FA Cup final. I've done the FA Cup final. It's unbelievable. The FA Cup final. I can't believe it. Are you listening? Is my old careers advisor at Wolferton School listening? The one that said I would never make it as a broadcaster.
Well,
yeah. FA Cup final, semi-final, 2 playoffs.
What final was it?
Which one? Sorry.
Which FA Cup final was it that you were at?
Ours by Arsenal.
The one we're not supposed to talk about.
So so Wembley has its own stadium announcer, but whenever there's a Wembley final on, they always get the stadium announcer from each of the 2 teams beforehand to read the teams out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. But to be fair, that is quite early on. So if you're not in the ground, it is
probably not.
It's about 3/4 of an hour before kickoff, so it's not right up to kickoff. So it would have been about 2:15 if it was a 3:00 kickoff. I can't remember. But each time at Wembley, Hull City fans have seen me in the concourse and say, "Oh, let me buy you a drink. Let me buy you a drink." And I've always said, "No. I need to not drink because I want to remember it." And then once I'm off the pitch, and they kind of escort you off the pitch and back to your seat, and yeah.
Then
have a pint.
I think to finalise on that one, then we're going to go for the Cardiff game.
Yeah, I think
the Man U game,
because yeah. Well, the Man U has so many different off stories. Yeah, but I mean that 8 minutes or so waiting to find out if we got promoted or not seemed like a lifetime. We all remember the Elmo dance, don't we? Oh yeah.
Well,
yeah, he went crazy bonkers. That was great. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that's everything, Steve. I honestly want to thank you for the patience for my neglect for the record button. So I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure. There's no radio show in the morning, is there?
No, not tomorrow. Not on the day of the record. No.
Oh, good. Well, like I said, it's been a pleasure having you aboard. I'm sure Nathaniel and Joel will back me up on that one. It's been amazing speaking.
No, Matt, Joel, and really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for having me as well.
Thank you very much.
Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.